Hey everybody! So I was reading all of the tweets, all the comments you guys made on the teacher Facebook page, that a lot of you guys were thankful for the notes I posted, and I'm really glad that you guys got something out of it because it was an absolutely incredible conference, so I was glad I was able to share that with you guys. I highly recommend, if you are able to in the future, definitely attend because there are a lot of things, a lot of different lectures that we as high school Latin teachers can take away from this and use to start implementing spoken Latin in our classes. Here's how I'm going to do this. Warning, I don't know how to work any kind of software to edit these things. Honestly, I don't even want to watch me doing this video again. So there probably will be a couple errors here and there, but I'm sure based on like my explanation, you guys will understand. Don't be that jerk commenting on the sections. Oh, you mispronounced this word and mispronounced that word. Leave it be. It does not matter. You get the point. So what I'm going to do is, like I said, all the conferences, all the lessons I attended to over this weekend were absolutely fabulous, and I'll post the link below if you haven't seen it to my notes from this weekend. But one of the lessons in particular was under Msgr Gallagher. I don't think I could explain it well enough in my notes for you to understand how useful this could be in your classes. So I figured the best thing I could do would be to make a video for you guys for it. So I'll post my Twitter handle, I'll post my email in the description. So if you have any questions or any things you are confused about or don't fully understand, feel free to contact me. I'm always looking to share information back and forth with people. So definitely reach out to me. All that'll be in the description of the video. Okay. So the way that I'm going to do this, I'm going to explain exactly what we did with Father Gallagher yesterday, and then if you want to hang around to the end of the video, at the end, I'll give you my 2 cents on how I plan on implementing it in my classes, in particular my Latin 1 and my Latin 3. Okay, so yesterday, the Irish Catholic girl in me was absolutely thrilled to have the chance to be reading this woman, Paideia. She's an early Christian female author who wrote in the 4th century AD, so it was cool enough just to read her. But even cooler was the fact that I was reading it with Monsignor Gallagher, who, as some of you may know, is one of the Pope's Latinists. So that was pretty freaking cool, I'm not gonna lie. So if you guys haven't heard of Paideia, it's okay. I haven't either before my graduate seminar this past fall. But she's definitely somebody I would recommend checking out. I'll put the link to her work from the Latin Library in the description section below. I definitely recommend, especially if you teach at a Catholic school, check her out because her writing, she wrote again in the 4th century AD, it's very colloquial. It reads a lot more like English, so left to right, subject, verb, object. There's no Ciceronian length sentences where you have to flip the page and scroll halfway down to find the verb, the main verb in the sentence. And especially because I know some of the feedback I've gotten from my students is that they love reading actual Latin rather than these stories about Caecilius and Quintus and etc., etc. They love feeling like they're actually accomplishing something reading real Latin that somebody wrote. So I would definitely check her out because she's not daunting. She's very basic, and it's something probably students at Advanced Latin 2 and definitely at Latin 3 level could read. Okay. So the first thing we did, so again, I'm going to post the link in the description of the text. I definitely recommend following along, that way you can really understand. So if you'll see in the first line, so it says, Oscendebantur iuxat scripturas. I'm skipping that line because the beginning of that sentence was lost to us. Unfortunately, a lot of pieces of her work was lost, but I'm starting at the interia part of the sentence, and I'm going to just stop down at Valem infantantem. So I'm doing just the first 2 lines of this. So the first thing we did is somebody read it in English and then translated it. No big deal. So then Monsignor Gallagher said to us, okay, Mike, let's say. So we have a present verb, and then we have 3 imperfect verbs. Change those all to the perfect. Okay, so it's definitely something all of us could easily do if we were sitting there, we're staring at the text, we're like, okay, third principal parts, first person plural endings, I got this. But when you're put on the spot and have to do this mentally, it really makes you think of this as a spoken language, which was obviously the point of this weekend, but it really was something that was challenging us, and we're all advanced classicists who were there, but it really made us think, which was absolutely incredible because it's something that we don't normally think in this way when it comes to Latin. So for the 3 verbs, so per venimos, ibamus, apierabant, and faciebant. So we had to change those into the perfect. So pervenimus becomes pervenerunt, ibamus becomes iverunt, apierabant becomes apuerunt, and faciebant becomes fecerunt. So this is definitely something that's useful for our students at like the Latin 3 level, or even Latin 2, I guess, because it makes us think of the 3 principal parts, knowing that facio becomes feci in the 3rd principal part, and you have to change it from faciebant to fecerunt. I definitely recommend maybe having one student do one verb and another student do another verb, rather than have Msgr Gallagher had one person do all 3 verbs. But again, based on the level of your students, you know what to do. So the next thing he did, which was a little more tricky, but I really loved it, he said, turn the sentence into indirect speech. So egeria dixit interia ambulantes, blah, 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 blah. So this is a really wonderful concept, because I know all of my Latin 3 students, I could say to them, all right, scroll through this, find me indirect speech, and they could easily underline the indirect speech because they would see dixit and then they look for the infinitive. No big deal. But when you make them think mentally, okay, indirect speech, what do I have to change the verb to? Oh wait, doesn't the case, the subject of it, doesn't it change cases? It's not in the nominative. When you put them on the spot, again, this is an awesome drill because it really makes them think mentally about this as if it was a spoken language. So then pervenimus becomes pervenire, so you change that into the infinitival form. And then imus, the subject we, you would have to express that because you can't take it from the infinitive, so you'd have to say nos ambulantes, so like we walking, which not too bad because both nos and ambulantes, both are the same in the nominative and the accusative forms. And then ad quendam locum, etc., etc. So that's a really useful way to reinforce the grammar concept of indirect speech. And then finally, the last thing he had us do as well would be to change the verbs into their passive forms. So pervenimus would become pervenimor, ibamus would be ibamor, faciebant would be faciebantor. And he called on me to do this one, and I had both a perfect verb and a future verb in my sentence, and I froze because even though I just taught this to my students maybe a month and a half ago, and it should be fresh in my memory, when you're put on the spot, no matter how skilled of a Latinist you are, you do get nervous and you're trying to recall all these rules to your head on the spot, and it does take a couple minutes and really, again, requires a different set of thought processes to really make you think of this. So again, I really thought this was really useful because I know all my Latin 3s, if I gave them a list of regular active verbs and I said, okay, now write out the passive forms of these, take them a couple minutes, but I know they could easily do it correctly. However, when you put somebody on the spot and they just have to think mentally, it really requires a different way of thinking that we as classicists and Latinists, we weren't traditionally taught to think like. So this is probably the easiest way to start bringing in this whole concept of spoken Latin into your classrooms at a more advanced level without just jumping into speaking in Latin. Okay, so if you want to turn off now, that was Msgr Gallagher's way of doing it. So now I'm going to do my little spiel about what I'm going to do to help implement this in my classroom. So now when Msgr Gallagher originally made us do this, I said out loud, well, I can't wait to make my students cry on Tuesday, as a joke. And I think a couple people in my class thought I was serious. I was not. I did not plan on making my students cry with this. However, if you jump into this head on and think your students can pick it up like that, I guarantee you a couple of them will leave crying tomorrow. Because you don't just think like indirect speech, change it to infinitive, change the subject to the accusative case. You really need to ease into it. So with my Latin 3s for something like that, what I would probably do is I would ask it generally to the class and not just put one person on the spot and say, okay, class, what do we have to do the verb to have indirect speech? And hopefully somebody will say we have to make the infinitive. And then I'd say, okay, so what do we do to make the subject? What case does it have to be in? They would say the accusative case. And then now that I've done those leading questions, I've gotten to them to that point, then I would put somebody on the spot and say, okay, Mike, how do I make this sentence now? Egeria dixit, etc. So yeah, definitely ease them into it. Take the time with it. But mostly in particular, I'm looking forward to implementing this in my Latin 1 class because I really think the earlier you start them doing something like this, the easier it'll be for them by the time they get to Latin 3, Latin 4, Latin AP, etc. So definitely try and start this as early on as possible. And the way I plan on doing that, so I'm on stage 11 now for the Cambridge Latin course, and so my Latin ones know the third person singular and plural of the present, imperfect, and the perfect tense. So we're going to go through a story, and I'm going to point out, say the word pugnabat, because that's my student's favorite word. And I'm going to ask somebody, so Johnny, what is pugnabat? And he'll hopefully say it's third singular imperfect. So now I'll pass the person next to him, say, Michelle, what is the present form of this word, pugnabat? And she'll hopefully say pugnat. And then I'll ask the person next to her, okay, so we have the perfect tense. And you know how sometimes in the perfect tense we have a weird little letter that appears that normally gives you a heads up that you have a perfect tense. What is that letter? And then somebody will probably say V. Then I'll ask the person next to them, what is the ending for the third person singular in the perfect? And that person will say IT. So see how I'm leading them on? I'm taking it step by step, and I'll probably be at the board writing the V, writing the IT. And then I'll ask finally the next person, and I'll say, okay, so, I don't know, Liam, I have pugnabat. How do I change this into the third person singular in the perfect? And then hopefully by leading him on, he will say pugnawit. So notice I'm building from question to question and not just overwhelming one student with that much thinking. And again, by the time if they start doing this in Latin 1 and they're trained to start thinking that way, so on and so forth, by the time you're in AP, they'll be able to do this on the spot, and it'll make their translating so much easier. And they'll really not only just read the language and memorize it, they'll really comprehend it and understand the way the grammar and it works. So this ended up being a lot longer than I thought. Again, my email and my Twitter handles are in the description. I believe that's below me. So please let me know if you have any questions or any other ideas. Maybe I inspired you to think, oh, that was really cool. I hope you think it's really cool. Maybe I'm going to add this on into my lesson. I would love to hear that. I always love hearing other people's best practices because I'm still new into teaching. So I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. So if you do something that really works for you, please share it with me. I would love to hear it. So let me know if you have any other ideas, comments, questions. Please don't complain. I know my pronunciation isn't the greatest and maybe I screwed up here or there, but really no need for that. But with that, I would really like to thank the Paideia Institute for such an incredible conference. I mean, it was unbelievable to be at a conference where there was 150 people, and really cool, I'm not going to lie, that like 75% of us were under the age of 40. That's not something you really expect for a classics conference. So it really shows that this new age of spoken Latin, as I believe it was Christopher Rico said, we kind of are in a new like renaissance with this. So we're really working hard, all of us together, to try and keep this language alive and keep all of our jobs. And I would especially love to thank Msgr Gallagher for his wonderful lessons and helping me to challenge my students. It was really great to work with you. It was really great to talk to him afterwards. I hope he doesn't get mad that I made this video. And I'd also like to thank, even though he wasn't there, unfortunately, Father Foster, because again, Msgr Gallagher said he did take this idea. These are the ways of thinking in Father Foster's method of teaching his spoken Latin. So again, it's been great. Talk to you guys soon. Bye.